Well, thank you so much for taking the time to attend the EnergyBiz Leadership Forum and taking time to participate in one of our panels.
Yeah, my pleasure.
And just wanted to take a few minutes to talk with you about some of the challenges and opportunities in the industry and the role that government plays in helping address some of those challenges. So
Sure.
To begin with, I mean, what are some of the key challenges that you see facing the power industry, as well as opportunities? And I mean, how does that differ between public power, investor-owned utilities, and cooperatives?
Well, there are some differences among the industry segments, the three you mentioned, but in this day and age, I think we have a lot more in common in terms of challenges and concerns. And I think we tend to, for the most part, face a lot of these issues and challenges and opportunities as an industry and have a lot of the same priorities and concerns. So, for example, one of the concerns right now is what's going to happen with climate change legislation and/or regulation by EPA of greenhouse gases. And so there's quite a bit of uncertainty, which makes it difficult, to plan and to move forward. And so our members are on record as of 2007, for example, supporting federal legislation as a solution to the climate change problem, recognizing existing legislation such as the Clean Air Act is not a good vehicle, is not, in our view, a workable vehicle for that. And we recognize this is an issue and a problem that's not going to go away. It needs some attention. So we'd like to see a thoughtful, workable and sustainable piece of legislation crafted sooner rather than later to address this problem. So we've been working hard. That's been a priority. Some progress has been made, but I think one of the things that kind of overhangs a lot of the issues, not only in the energy industry, but healthcare and other priorities, is the economy. It's a weak economy. There's a lot of concern about ability to pay. And when you start looking at the things that need to be done to lower our carbon content of our energy and electricity portfolio, unfortunately, one of the things they have in common is they all cost more money. Whether we're talking about retrofitting plants or building new renewables or building the transmission necessary to integrate renewables into the grid or just keep the lights on and eliminate congestion and provide for future growth, whether it's doing more energy efficiency, doing more smart grid investments. These all have merit, but it's a long-term prospect to do this. It's a very capital-intensive industry. These things take time to do right. But we'd like to get started as soon as possible and have some certainty about the framework that we're working in. But I have to say, in the short term anyway, if not the long term, there are some real financial challenges posed. And it's going to be incumbent upon the industry to communicate those to all the stakeholders, the customers, the regulators, the elected officials, and our communities that we serve. So that's something I think, that particular set of challenges is common, in my view, to all the players in the electric utility industry, not just us. And so certainly climate change. And a lot of the other issues and challenges kind of derive from the climate change problem. Some of them predate the climate change issues, such as the need for transmission. That was discussed in the panel today at some length, and some good comments and insights I thought provided on that. It's one of these problems that I don't think is going to go away. It's a very difficult, if not intractable, problem to deal with. New transmission lines are very visible. They're not politically popular. In our society, it doesn't take many people, particularly if they're well organized and vocal, to stop things from happening, like a transmission line. And so, the challenge to our industry is to make this happen before reliability is significantly affected in an adverse way. We don't want that. If that happens, we've failed. And so we want to try to avoid that. But it is difficult. It's very difficult. It's one of the reasons why my organization, which is over 2,000 consumer-owned, not-for-profit power systems, most of them fairly small. We're all about local control, and we're locally owned and regulated. We supported 5 years ago a federal backstop authority for siting of transmission lines. Now, that was not something that came naturally. It took a lot of discussion, but we felt this problem is so difficult that it required extraordinary measures. The siting is, the financing and planning is a challenge as well. The siting historically has been a real problem. And so that's something that we hope gets addressed as part of, either separately or as part of the climate change legislation that's moving forward. Infrastructure development issues, and issues surrounding that. We would like to see renewable development occur. We've been leaders in renewable development. One of the things that concerns us, as I mentioned on our panel, is there aren't comparable incentives. I mean, the way the federal government provides incentives is through the tax code. We're not taxable entities. And so our friends at co-ops and public power, municipally and state-owned power systems, don't have comparable incentives in our view as to the private sector. We support the incentives that the private sector has received. We promote renewable development, but there's more that can be done in the area of incentives for public power systems that would result in more, not only more renewable capacity, but I think a more equitable sharing of the benefits, because we're not for profit. The benefits of any incentive go right to our ratepayers. And so it's spread across a broad base, not just to developers. So we'd like to see more of that happen. We have some very specific proposals there that we've made public and have lobbied our representatives in Congress about. And we're making a little progress there, but more needs to be done. So that's clearly a priority. So that's just, some of the things that are keeping us busy.
Yeah, I mean, you brought up some, obviously very significant issues, from climate change, energy efficiency, to different transmission issues. And you talked a little bit about the, more local control, local power versus the federal government. I mean, where do you see that balance? I mean, does it vary from issue to issue? Well,
yes, it varies. I mean, but when you're talking about something that's a global problem, then you have to expect at least some kind of federal role and involvement there. And of course, the states have been asking for that, for some, some direction and leadership on the part of the federal government, and we support that. We're trying to do our part to make that happen. But we don't want certainty at any cost. I mean, you don't want a situation where there's some kind of a backlash or a financial problem that occurs that's widespread as a result of the legislation. Nobody wants that. Reasonable people can disagree about what's workable, and sustainable. And that's where I think a lot of the action will be around this issue. It's not clear now whether cap and trade is going to go forward. Some comments in the press, about cap and trade is dead. We don't know. We have some principles we'd like to see adhered to, if there is some kind of climate change legislation, and we're committed to working to make something happen.
And then what about, you had also brought up, some of the different incentives that are being offered at the federal level. I mean, there's a pretty big stimulus package that came out, providing some funding.
The stimulus package is presumably a one-time kind of opportunity. I was referring earlier to some structural incentives that can be multi-year or if not long-term, at least more than 1 year. But yeah, the stimulus, I think was a shot in the arm for certain activities. Certainly smart grid was given a boost. We received, the industry, over $4 billion. My members, 33 of my members, received over $500 million in incentives. So that was very encouraging. On smart grid, we think that there's a lot of potential there, that it can help do a lot of things. It can increase efficiencies. It can provide services and real-time pricing to our customers. It can help integrate renewables and plug-in hybrid electric vehicles in the future into the grid. It can enhance reliability. But one size doesn't fit all. And every system is going to have to develop, in our view, its own plan to deal with this. And what we've taken with the stimulus package and other things that have been done in the last few years are really the first steps on a fairly long journey. I mean, to do this nationwide, we're talking many years. This isn't something you snap your fingers and it happens. But we think it's a journey worth taking if done correctly. One of the challenges we face with all these issues, but we're particularly becoming sensitized to it with the smart grid, is that we need to communicate the benefits and the value to our customers. We're beginning to understand it. Our members are beginning to craft their approach, the elements of their approach. And there are some technical and financial challenges in doing that. But the communication challenges are also significant. And otherwise, we risk, I think, lack of support or even a backlash, to what could be some fairly significant investments. For example, one of our larger members, two of our larger members received over $100 million in smart grid for just a portion of their project. They have to match that. That's a lot of money, to spend in the next couple of years, and they're going to be spending more down there. So you have to make that case to your elected commission, your appointed commission, or to your customers that there are benefits. They need to see that value, and so we're counseling our members to not lose sight of that. And in developing your plan, touch base with your customers, both small and large, to see, what would add value here? Do you see the value of this? If you can demonstrate, for example, that you're going to save money by doing this, which you can, in my view. I used to manage a utility a few years ago, and we did a lot of this in the early part of the last decade. And we saw some real efficiencies, cost savings that would help keep our rates lower and provide better service. So there is a case to be made here. It needs to be communicated well, though.
So do you see the benefits of moving toward a smarter grid or looking at some of these technologies, that it varies on a regional basis in terms of some of the drivers?
It could. I think it could actually vary on a system-by-system basis as well.
True. Yeah.
Energy issues do tend to be regional in nature in this country. A smart grid, I guess to the extent that you're facing different transmission or other grid issues, they could vary. We're focused more with our members on their retail systems and what they're doing, and we've seen evidence that it does vary quite a bit on a system level. Smart meters may make a lot of sense for one system, but for another smaller system, it may not. There are other things they may do. They may focus, for example, on automating their distribution system so that they can switch their breakers and feeders on and off remotely to provide better service. That's a smart grid. It doesn't get into your meter necessarily, but it provides a better level of service and perhaps a safer restoration. So there are different things that different systems may prioritize. It's all really part of a more interactive grid that helps you optimize the use of the resources you have.
Yeah, I think there are definitely many different approaches that utility companies are taking. And
yeah, they definitely are, and they probably should. You just need to have a carefully thought out plan that is both technical, financial, and communications in nature.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much for taking the time to chat with us today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thanks.